Thanks everyone for staying with us. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. Ukraine has announced the recapture of its first settlements since the president acknowledged that a long-promised counteroffensive is underway. Its troops recaptured 3 villages from Russian forces in its southeast, the first liberated settlements, it reported, since launching a counteroffensive. Soldiers hoisted the Ukrainian flag at a bombed-out building in an unverified video published on Sunday, which identified the settlement as one of those in the Donetsk region. Ukraine forces also retook Makarivka, the next village to the south, along 2 directions on the southern front. A Ukrainian territorial defense unit also posted unverified footage on Telegram of its soldiers holding up their flag in a village closest to the Ukrainian positions in the area. Meanwhile, Ukraine says Russia has targeted another dam, this time in Zaporizhzhia region. A spokesperson for the Ukrainian military, Valery Shershin, said Moscow's forces blew up the structure near the village of Novodarivka, leading to flooding on both banks of the Mokry-Yali River. Although this claim is yet to be verified, Ukraine says Russia is deliberately blowing up dams in the region to halt its advance towards occupied areas. Last Monday, the huge Kakhovka Dam was breached, causing major flooding. Ukraine's military and NATO accuse Russia of being responsible, while Russia has blamed Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says work has started on an international criminal court investigation of last week's breach of the dam in Kherson and the flooding it triggered. According to him, representatives of the International Criminal Court have visited Kherson region in recent days, and on the very first day after the disaster, the General Prosecutor's Office sent a corresponding request to the ICC concerning an investigation of this disaster, and that work has already begun. Mr. Zelensky believes it's important that international legal experts saw the aftermath of the disaster, including incidents of shelling of flooded areas. Meanwhile, at least 6 people have been killed by flooding following the explosion at the Nova Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. Ukrainian Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko said 46 settlements were flooded, with over 2,000 people evacuated, including 190 children. 5 people died, while 35 are considered missing, including 7 children. Mr. Klimenko further said that 31 settlements were flooding in the Mykolaiv region, where 1 person was killed and 982 people evacuated, including 167 children. In the meantime, Denise Brown, humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine, United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, has visited Bilozeka, where the body delivered 5 trucks to one of the communities worst affected by the floods caused by the Kakhovka Dam blast. Denise Brown also met with residents and authorities who thanked the United Nations for help since day one and asked not to forget them. Humanitarians in Ukraine are helping people to get to safer areas, access to clean water and food, and get cash assistance to meet their most urgent needs.
The priorities are rescuing people from those places, and we're hoping to go across with boats to get to some of them in the course of the next day or 2. That's the first thing. Secondly, safe water, medical supplies, food to wherever they are, so that they can actually get back on their feet. This is just for the emergency phase. This is for now. We then will move to an interim phase when we are looking at the humanitarian consequences of this appalling act, which includes the fact there are up to 700,000 people without safe drinking water, the fact that there are mines which are now floating. It's one of the most highly mined parts of the world, as you know, there. And so we will be looking at livelihoods, safe water, health, especially for children. The third phase will be to look at the economic and environmental consequences. And that, I'm afraid, is going to be the most awful shock for the people of Ukraine, but also for the global south, because it's bound to have an impact on global food prices, because that area is a breadbasket. and it's almost certainly going to be destroyed for any near-term harvesting. We have developed over this period, this appalling war, very, very strong relationships operationally, both at the Kyiv level, but also, crucially, at the oblast level with governors. And I myself was in Kherson and Mykolaiv just before Christmas, meeting local authorities. And we've been working with them to provide humanitarian aid throughout this period. And that's continued. So yesterday, 2 convoys went to Kherson to deliver aid. We've reached about 30,000 people so far. Another convoy today. So the engine is moving.
The VOA's Anna Jennikova joins us now. Anna, good to see you today.
Good evening.
Right, so it appears that Ukraine is making gains in its counteroffensive. Talk to us on how this is panning out, especially what President Zelensky has said.
Yeah, it looks like that we have some first confirmations, official confirmations from Ukrainian authorities, particularly from the Ministry of Defense, that actually Ukrainian forces started certain counteroffensive actions with certain results already, and these results were announced by the Ministry of Defense. We have statements from Ukrainian authorities about liberation by Ukrainian forces, couple of settlements in the Donetsk region and also in the Zaporizhia region, and mostly all the settlements are on the border, basically, of Zaporizhia and Donetsk region. So we can clearly see that apparently at this point, Ukrainian forces started certain activities in this area, meaning, and also additionally, there are confirmations of certain advance at the Bakhmut area, which is deeper into the Donetsk region. So basically, we can see that, and we can clearly see that there are 2 main directions at this point. But again, a lot of experts are saying that still this is certain kind of point-by-point counteroffensive actions. Some more global actions are yet to come.
Russia has also acknowledged the Ukrainian, counteroffensive in Donetsk. What does this mean for the region and also the people of the area?
Definitely this is something that is logical in terms of Ukrainian actions, because Ukraine wants to liberate all its territories, and Ukrainian authorities and President Zelensky, everyone is quite clear about that. So, in terms of the meaning, this is another step for this liberation by Ukrainian forces. We will see how successful or what would be the level of success of these actions. But at this point, this looks logical that this is one of the area, Donbass in general, one of the areas for counteroffensive. What we also can say that for sure, Ukrainian forces have certain priorities in these directions, and they want to either cut supplies or cut certain excess of Russian forces in certain areas, and basically cut this united front line that Russian forces created when they occupied areas, making this corridor from Donbass to the Zaporizhia region and to Kherson region. So I think that this would be the main meaning of this. But again, we will see. It's difficult to say for, at this point, because we don't have enough details and enough tactical information, of course, from the military. But definitely, this is one of the steps for Ukrainian goal to liberate its territories.
Right, Anna, and how is Russia taking all of this? Ukraine scoring some of its first victories in this counteroffensive.
Well, for the moment, I think it's too early to say But for Russian forces, and this was also confirmed. Well, not confirmed, but it was a comment from Ukrainian military that they can see that Russian forces are moving certain divisions, certain military from Kherson region to the Zaporizhia and Donetsk region, so to that direction. So apparently, and definitely Russian forces would keep their defense positions. They had enough time to prepare these defense positions, and at this point, we will just have to wait and see. Again, as I said, we don't have enough details of these operations and so on and so forth. But definitely, Russian forces will be defending. And we'll try maybe to also create certain advances in certain areas. But again, we will see. It will depend a lot on how what would be the Ukrainian actions of the Ukrainian army, particularly, and also what Russian forces would do, because there are also a lot of talks about possible actions by Russian forces and maybe even provocations that could happen possibly in that areas.
So Anna, talk us through the impact of the explosion on this dam, an update on the rescue efforts and the situation of those trapped by the floods.
So what we definitely can say is that situation remains very, very difficult because, again, water is still high. However, the level of water started to go down in Kherson region and in Mykolaiv region. But for the moment, this remains this remains still a huge catastrophe, and it will in long term. We see that rescue operation is still ongoing, so rescue teams continue to save as much people and animals as possible. Every day we see footage from that area. Ukrainian volunteers are coming from all over Ukraine to save, to help, to save people and to save animals. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that International Criminal Court has started the investigation. He said that representatives of the International Criminal Court have already visited the area, and that Ukrainian Prosecutor General contacted them on the next day when the this catastrophe happened, and that the investigation is ongoing, which is definitely a good sign, because of course the impact of this catastrophe is not only economic, but what is extremely important to understand that it's natural disaster, and it's also flora and fauna, which is it just destroyed it under huge risk, destroyed settlements, and a very high risk of disease, because we all also understand that settlements, destroyed settlements had cemeteries and all this kind of infrastructure that is now under the water. So we will have to also see in some time, when water goes down, when certain territories would be back from under the water, but the risks of disease, the risks of additional troubles connected to this natural disaster are yet to come as well. And also experts are reminding people about some basic rules of how to behave, because, for instance, water is not usable at all in that area, neither technical water nor drinking water. So the main task now for volunteers and for the authorities to make sure that people have enough water to drink and to use for technical usage. So this is what we have for the moment. Good news that water started to go down, but the water level, but still situation is very tough. And also good news that we have from the authorities of Kherson region that it was possible to evacuate over 100 people from occupied areas, because this is more difficult for Ukrainian military to evacuate areas which are not under Ukrainian control. And also additionally, unfortunately, Russian forces continue to shell Kherson and Kherson region, and this creates additional risks for evacuation.
Right, Anna, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Well, those who have been released consist of those who have been in action near the city of Mariupol under Russian siege for weeks last year. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant, briefly held last year by Russian forces from Serpent Island in the Black Sea and from Bakhmut, still a focal point of fighting in the east. The prisoners are seen smiling and happy to be back home, even as they arrive in Russia. Elsewhere, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is on a visit to Kyiv, has expressed support for talks on Ukraine joining NATO. Speaking at the Canadian Embassy in Kyiv after talk with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Trudeau said Canada was very supportive of Ukraine joining NATO when the conditions allow, adding that he feels very positive about talks on the issue ahead of a NATO summit in Vilnius next month. Mr. Trudeau also said that Canada's move to seize and give to Ukraine a Russian-registered cargo plane grounded in Canada since last year was symbolically important in showing that Western countries are serious about making Mr. Putin and his enablers pay for the war.
And many others are very supportive of Ukraine joining NATO when the conditions allow. What that exactly looks like is a conversation that we're continuing to have between now and Vilnius, but I'm very positive about it. On continue d'être solidaire avec le plan de la paix que l'Ukraine est en train de proposer. On sait très bien que la paix est désirable pour tout le monde, mais elle doit être sur les termes ukrainiens. La Russie a choisi d'envahir l'Ukraine. Ils pensaient pouvoir conquérir l'Ukraine en quelques semaines. Ils ont échoué de façon lamentable à ce niveau-là. As important and as massive as the Antonov itself is, its greater importance is as a first step in demonstrating that Canada and other countries are serious about making Putin and his enablers pay for the war that they've caused. We are one of the first countries to bring in specific legislation that allows us not just to ground this plane, but to actually seize it and ensure that it is never used by Russia again in the war effort or in any other efforts. There is a process. This is one of the early processes we're going through. We're going to do it as quickly as possible, but I can tell you, and the Ukrainians are very pleased that the path is started, not just for Canada, but hopefully for other countries as well. I don't put any stake in anything that Vladimir Putin says. He has demonstrated that he lies every time he opens his mouth. He deliberately uses misinformation and disinformation on his own people and on anyone else he can reach.